Welcome to Conversations That Awaken. This is a special series from A Course in Miracles that has inspired millions of readers around the world. Some see it as a spiritual masterpiece, others find it mysterious, challenging, or even controversial. Whatever brings you here, we invite you to leave your beliefs and your disbeliefs at the door. This is not a Bible study, this is not a sermon, and it is not about asking you to accept anyone else's truth. It is an invitation to investigate reality for yourself. I am Kim. In every episode, Joe and I will explore the text found in A Course in Miracles through 6 powerful lenses: science, philosophy, psychology, mysticism, direct experience, and everyday living. We'll ask difficult questions, we'll challenge assumptions, we'll laugh together, and we'll discover how these teachings can transform the way we see ourselves, our relationships, and the world around us. Whether you're new to A Course in Miracles or have studied it for decades, our purpose is simple: to uncover the timeless wisdom hidden beneath its words. We won't ask, what should we believe? We'll ask, what can we discover? Because awakening is not about collecting new ideas. It is about change in perception. It's about seeing clearly. It's about moving from fear to love, from separation to wholeness, from confusion to understanding. So take a deep breath, set aside everything you think you know, and join us for a special series in A Course in Miracles.
What if the thoughts you're having right now, like the low-level anxiety about tomorrow's schedule, or that phantom argument you totally replayed in the shower this morning?
Oh, we all have those.
Right, or even just that sudden urge to check your email just in case. What if those thoughts aren't actually yours?
That is a genuinely unsettling premise when you first hear it.
Yeah, because we just assume that if a voice is in our head, it must be our voice, and that it's operating in our best interest.
Exactly. But the reality of human cognition, and especially the specific framework we're looking into today, it suggests something entirely different.
Like a completely different operating system.
Right. It suggests we're carrying around this inherited hypervigilant system that is, well, fundamentally terrified of peace.
And that is exactly what we are dissecting today for you, the learner, because we know you are out there constantly juggling a million demands, parsing through massive amounts of info, and you're looking for insights that actually change how you operate on a Tuesday afternoon.
Practical application, yeah.
Right. Today's deep dive isn't just a historical survey or some abstract trivia. We are looking at the invisible battery drain of your own mind.
We are mapping out the ultimate internal conflict between what's commonly called the ego and an alternative state that actually offers a way out of the exhaustion.
Okay, let's unpack this. The material we're drawing from today comes from excerpts focusing on, well, the illusions of the ego. It's from Chapter 4 of A Course in Miracles.
And it's really important to set some context here because, this is a text that can easily be misunderstood if you just glance at the terminology.
Yeah, I actually want to push back on that immediately because when I first looked at this stack of notes, my initial reaction was a bit of skepticism.
Which is completely fair.
Right, because the source material uses heavily loaded Christian terminology: God, Jesus, the cross, salvation. If someone listening doesn't come from that tradition, or maybe they've been hurt by it, it might feel like a huge barrier. So is this just a theological lecture?
That is the exact right question to ask, and the answer is absolutely not. What makes this framework so fascinating and honestly so widely studied by psychologists is that it completely redefines that traditional architecture.
So it's using the old words for new concepts.
Exactly. It takes the familiar vocabulary of Western religion and repurposes it to describe a radical, non-dualistic psychology. It is entirely focused on the mechanics of the mind.
Oh, I see.
So, when it talks about salvation, it's not talking about some cosmic rescue mission. It's talking about waking up from a nightmare of your own making. It's about achieving mental clarity.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. So the core premise we're exploring is that in every single moment, we're actively choosing between 2 completely distinct internal voices.
Yes, 2 distinct operating systems.
Right, and the first is this quiet, grounded state, which the framework calls spirit. And it basically says, be still and know that I am God. Or, I guess, translated psychologically, you are inherently whole, safe, and connected. Just be.
Which sounds lovely, but then there's the ego.
Yeah. And the ego is, well, it's anything but still.
Now, the ego is characterized as a 24-hour emergency news channel. Its fundamental directive is basically be anxious and check again. because something terrible may have happened in the last 30 seconds.
It's literally the doom scrolling of the soul.
Doom scrolling of the soul, yes. And we have to look at why it operates that way. Evolutionarily, we're wired for threat detection, all right?
Sure, to not get eaten by tigers.
Exactly. The ego leverages that biological imperative, but it shifts the focus from physical survival to the survival of an image.
Oh, wow.
It constantly scans the horizon, not for predators, but for slights, for disrespect, for evidence that we are falling behind. It demands hypervigilance to maintain this constructed version of who we think we are.
That brings me right back to this metaphor, which is kind of our first lens today, the lens of the background app.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right, because if you have a beautifully optimized smartphone, it runs flawlessly because the operating system is efficient. That is the spirit. But the ego is this rogue, unmanaged process just running in the background. It is constantly pinging external servers for validation, pushing notifications to your brain about like an awkward thing you said 3 years ago.
And running defensive firewalls against literally everyone you interact with.
Yes. No wonder we are all so incredibly tired.
The profound exhaustion of modern life is rarely just physical. The material argues that true devotion, true connection to a grounded state of being, does not actually cause fatigue.
Because inspiration energizes us.
Exactly. The exhaustion comes entirely from the maintenance of the ego. The ego forces us on what this framework brilliantly calls useless journeys.
Okay, now, I have to admit, useless journeys hit a little close to home for me. What exactly constitutes a useless journey in this context? Because, my ego totally wants to argue that all my stressing and striving is highly necessary.
Of course it does, because the ego justifies its very existence through that striving. A useless journey is basically any mental or physical pursuit driven by the need to prove your worth.
Or defend your image.
Right. Or validate a past grievance. Think about the sheer mental gymnastics involved in trying to mentally win an argument you had with a coworker last week.
Oh, I've spent hours doing that. Pacing around the kitchen, winning phantom arguments.
We all do it. Or think about the amount of energy spent trying to curate a lifestyle that proves to your peers that you're successful. The ego demands that you pack your bags, leave the present moment, and go on a quest for something you inherently already possess.
And the ultimate useless journey mentioned here is really provocative, bringing us back to that repurposed terminology. It talks about the journey to the cross.
Yeah, the crucifixion.
Now, culturally and historically, the crucifixion is widely understood as the glorification of sacrifice. It's so deeply ingrained in our collective psyche that suffering is somehow holy.
That bearing heavy burdens makes you a better, more spiritual person.
Exactly, the whole martyr complex. And this is where the framework offers a massive, radical paradigm shift. It looks directly at this deeply held cultural belief and essentially says, you completely misunderstood the assignment.
You got it completely backwards.
So it's arguing that the point of the crucifixion wasn't to teach us how to suffer well.
Precisely. It argues that the journey of guilt, suffering, and punishment should be the final useless journey. The meaning of the crucifixion, in this psychological interpretation, is absolutely not that suffering is desirable.
Wait, really?
It's not. Its meaning is that suffering can be entirely overcome. The true message, the good news, is the resurrection, which is defined here as the ability of the human mind to awaken, completely leave the past behind, and choose life instead of death.
Wait, that is huge. Because if I think about how often I, and probably everyone listening right now, have wallowed in guilt over a mistake, it's almost as if beating myself up is a form of penance.
Right, like if I suffer enough, I'm a good person.
Yeah, like if I feel terrible enough for long enough, it proves I care. This philosophy is saying that self-flagellation isn't noble at all, it's just the ego keeping me trapped.
It is the ego's ultimate trap. Guilt anchors you to the past. If you're agonizing over what you did yesterday, you are entirely unavailable to be helpful today. You are paralyzed.
So it's actively unhelpful.
Completely. The framework explicitly states that you do not honor the concept of a divine teacher by repeatedly crucifying yourself with guilt. Beating yourself up heals absolutely no one.
Which naturally begs the question, if the goal is to drop the guilt and wake up, how do we actually learn to do that? Because I can hear this logically, but my default setting is still the 24-hour panic channel.
Right, the background app is still running.
Exactly. We need a way to actually rewire the system.
And that requires a guide, which introduces the next major pillar of this material, the dynamic of true teaching and true learning. The transition from the ego's thought system to a peaceful thought system isn't usually something you can just spontaneously trigger on your own.
You need a partnership.
Yes, you need a teacher.
And the source material focuses heavily on Jesus as this ultimate teacher, but again, in a very specific, non-traditional way. It explicitly says that he offers to help us manage our fear and our mistaken identities, but he never offers to replace our spirit.
He isn't doing the homework for you?
Right. That distinction is paramount. A lot of traditional models of spirituality are deeply paternalistic. They suggest you're broken, and a divine figure will swoop in, fix you, and do the heavy lifting while you just act sufficiently grateful.
And this framework completely rejects that. Here, Jesus is presented as a teacher, guiding students to learn, to understand, and to actively practice the truth that their physical bodies and their egos are not their ultimate identity.
And the end goal of this teaching isn't to create a bunch of dependent followers, is it?
Not at all. The text is very clear that the ultimate goal is for the students to eventually become teachers themselves, to become teachers like him.
We learn this together so that we can become free together.
Exactly. The objective of a genuine teacher is to eventually make themselves obsolete. They want you to realize that you have the exact same inherent power and access to peace that they do.
That is such a stark contrast to what the material calls the ego-centered teacher. And the imagery used here is actually quite funny, which brings us to our third lens, the lens of the large photograph.
Oh, the photograph near the entrance, yes.
It notes that the ego teacher wants followers, applause, and, quote, preferably a large photograph near the entrance. We have all encountered this archetype.
Oh, absolutely.
The corporate thought leader, the wellness guru, the life coach, whose entire brand is built on convincing you that they possess a secret you don't have.
The psychology of the ego-centered teacher is rooted in profound insecurity. Because the ego secretly suspects it has no real value, it tries to extract a sense of worth from external validation.
It needs an audience.
It needs a power differential. It needs you to stay small so it can feel big.
Yeah.
But a true teacher knows that their worth and your worth is an inherent given.
It can't be added to or subtracted from.
Right. Nothing you learn, accomplish, or fail at can change it. Therefore, there is no need for a large photograph at the entrance. True teaching is about empowerment, not extraction.
But here is where I get confused, or at least where I look at human behavior and just scratch my head. If we're offered this incredible deal, a true teacher showing us how to drop our exhaustion, recognize our inherent worth, and be completely free, why do we fight it so hard?
Because we do fight it, violently.
Yeah. Why is personal growth always such an agonizing 2 steps forward, 1 step back process?
Because to the ego, real learning is a life or death threat. Real learning requires change. It requires abandoning the old operating system. The ego's entire existence is predicated on the status quo of your past, your fears, and your grievances.
So healing isn't seen as a relief? It's seen as an assassination attempt on the ego.
Precisely. And the way this manifests psychologically is fascinating. We develop an intense resistance to learning because, as the framework observes, we prefer familiar misery to unfamiliar freedom.
I have to highlight that phrase, familiar misery to unfamiliar freedom. It's so brutally accurate. The material jokes about how we treat a miserable, punishing thought we've had for 30 years like it's practically family.
Think about a deeply held insecurity, perhaps a belief that you're inherently unlovable, or a lingering resentment toward a parent. That thought causes you pain every single time you engage with it.
But I know exactly how that pain feels.
Exactly. You know how to operate within the parameters of that misery. You have built defense mechanisms around it. It is a known quantity. If you were to genuinely let that go to forgive, to step into complete freedom and self-worth, who would you be?
I wouldn't know how to interact with the world.
It's the void, the unknown.
Yes, and the ego equates the unknown with danger. So it convinces you that holding on to the familiar pain is actually a form of safety. It tells you that if you lose your grievances, you lose your identity.
Which brings us to the core illusion, the real magic trick of this whole dynamic. Why do we believe that this ego, this collection of familiar miseries, is our identity?
The text asks a really interesting question here. How did the mind ever make the ego?
It's the classic philosophical question, the origin of the fall, so to speak. But what's brilliant is that the framework essentially waves that question off as a distraction. It says the origin story just doesn't matter.
So it's like, don't worry about how the fire started, just put it out.
Exactly. The truly vital question is, how are we making the ego right now?
Because it's an active process. It's not something that happened to us. It's something we are doing in this very second.
Exactly. The ego is defined here as an invented self. It is an unstable, constantly shifting amalgamation of memories, social roles, fears, and future projections. It is a construct that we have to actively maintain moment to moment.
And this is where the implications get truly wild. If I am an invented self, actively simulating my own identity, the material points out that I am also inventing egos for everyone else.
They're creating avatars.
Right, I am creating avatars of the people in my life.
This is one of the most practical, relationship-altering insights in the entire text. When you interact with someone under the ego's operating system, you're not actually interacting with the reality of that person in the present moment.
So who am I interacting with?
You are interacting with your historical data regarding them.
Oh, wow. So if I'm arguing with my partner, it's not really me and my partner in the room. It's my imagined, simulated avatar of myself, complete with all my defenses, fighting with my imagined version of them based on everything they've ever done wrong in the past.
Yes. You are running a complex simulation in your mind. You are puppeteering both sides of the conflict.
I'm literally fighting myself.
You anticipate what they will say, you get angry at the thing you imagine they will say, and your physiological response, your heart rate, your adrenaline, it spikes before they even open their mouth.
That happens all the time.
The ego can change its emotional state entirely based on a shift in perception, even if the external reality hasn't changed at all.
It's exhausting just talking about it, but it makes so much sense why releasing this feels terrifying. Which leads to this absolutely brilliant analogy in the source notes, our second lens for today.
The lens of the screaming toddler.
Yes. The lens of the toddler with the scissors. It says that letting go of the ego feels frightening in the exact same way that a screaming toddler reacts when you take a pair of scissors away from them.
It's a perfect metaphor. The toddler is furious, screaming, completely heartbroken, because in their mind they're thinking, that was my favorite toy. I needed that.
They don't have the perspective to understand that the object is lethal.
Right.
That was my favorite dangerous object. We are that toddler. And the scissors are our anger, our need for control, our victimhood. We cling to our righteous indignation, thinking it's a shield that protects us from being hurt again.
We think our anger keeps us safe.
But the framework is pointing out that we're just running with scissors, and eventually we are the ones who get cut.
And we cling to those scissors because they are the primary currency in the ego's economy, which is another huge concept here. The ego operates on a deeply flawed economic model based entirely on comparison and transactional exchange.
Let's call this our fourth lens, the emotional ledger.
The ledger, yes. The foundational belief of the ego is that resources, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, are strictly finite. Therefore, the ego believes that giving means losing.
I see this constantly in everyday life. In the ego's world, it's a zero-sum game. If I give you the benefit of the doubt, I lose the upper hand. If I give you my time, I have less time. The text says the ego keeps receipts, even emotional ones.
The emotional ledger is the ego's favorite accounting tool. It views love and kindness not as expressions of a natural state, but as investments that demand a guaranteed return.
I was supportive of your career transition last year, therefore you owe me unquestioning loyalty now.
Exactly. When you live by the ledger, you're constantly assessing whether you're ahead or behind, whether you're better or worse than the people around you. Equality is fundamentally incomprehensible to the ego.
Because if we are all truly equal, the ego has no leverage. It has no hierarchy to climb, and it's so sneaky about maintaining this hierarchy. There is a great observation here about how the ego will co-opt anything, even spiritual growth, to stay on top.
Oh, yes.
It mentions how the ego can turn meditation into a competition.
I reached inner silence much faster than he did, or my mindfulness practice is far more disciplined than hers. You see this in spiritual communities all the time.
It's so ironic.
It is. The very tools designed to dismantle the ego are weaponized to build a more sophisticated, quote-unquote, enlightened ego.
I am winning at ego death. It's absurd.
It is entirely absurd. But the framework contrasts this economy of scarcity with the spirit's economy of abundance. It posits that true generosity is not transactional. It flows naturally from a state of abundance.
Because the well never runs dry.
Right. When you operate from the understanding that your inherent worth and your capacity for love are infinite, giving love does not deplete your supply. In fact, paradoxically, extending love to others is how you increase your own awareness of it.
Okay, so we've mapped out the 24-hour panic channel, the simulated avatars, the emotional ledger, the toddler with the scissors. It is an incredibly combative way to live. But we keep mentioning this alternative, the spirit, the state of abundance. What does that actually look like?
Well, the source material redefines a very famous, very misunderstood phrase to explain this alternative. The kingdom of heaven is within you.
Culturally, that phrase is often interpreted as like a spatial metaphor. People imagine there's a tiny, glowing, divine spark hidden somewhere deep inside the physical organs of the body, surrounded by all our earthly flaws.
But the text aggressively corrects that misinterpretation. It argues that the kingdom of heaven does not mean a distant, holy place has somehow been squeezed inside your biological form. It means something vastly more profound. It is what you are.
I want to pause on that because it's subtle, but it's massive. You don't contain it, you are it.
Exactly.
Your true fundamental nature is already united, complete, and completely protected. The ego can't actually destroy it. The ego's only power is to create enough noise to distract you from noticing it.
The ego cannot alter reality. It can only alter your awareness of reality. And this explains why the ego views the spirit as an existential threat. The spirit's very presence exposes the illusion of separation.
The ego wants you separate.
Yes, the ego approaches you and offers a highly specific, very fragile, temporary identity. It hands you a physical body, a name, a credit score, a trauma history, and a limited lifespan. And it says, this is the totality of who you are. Defend it with your life.
While the spirit is offering permanence, it's offering an unshakable awareness of simply being without the need for a label. But if that's true, it raises a really frustrating question for the learner.
Which is?
If spirit is offering us a literal kingdom of peace and permanence, why do we constantly settle for the flimsy cardboard cutout the ego hands us? Why do we trade a kingdom for a name tag?
We trade it because we are deeply, fundamentally afraid of love.
That sounds completely counterintuitive. I mean, everyone says they want love. Every pop song is about wanting love.
We want the ego's version of love, but we are terrified of true unconditional love because we have projected our own self-hatred onto the universe.
Hey, unpack that for me.
Because we identify so strongly with our invented selves, our flaws, our secret guilt, the things we are ashamed of. We assume that whatever divine source or absolute reality exists must judge us the exact same way we judge ourselves.
Oh, wow. So we think, I know all the dark, petty thoughts in my own head. I don't even like the self I invented. So if I open myself up to an ultimate divine love, it's going to look at me, see how flawed I am, and smite me.
Yeah.
We project our own internal punisher onto reality.
Precisely. We build massive psychological walls to protect ourselves from being seen. And the ego steps in and offers a safe, highly controlled substitute for real love.
The contract.
Yes, the ego's version of love operates like a legal contract. It says, I will love you, provided you sign here and accept the terms and conditions. You must behave this way, you must make me feel this way, and if you violate the contract, the love is immediately withdrawn.
It is safe because it is controllable.
Whereas true love, true spirit, offers no contract. And the text notes something beautiful here. It says God, or this ultimate reality, doesn't violently break down the walls you've built. Because true love doesn't attack. It doesn't force entry.
It just waits.
It simply waits, offering help to show you how to dismantle your own defenses when you are ready.
But as you said earlier, we love our walls. We are incredibly attached to the bricks we used to build them, and those bricks are our grievances.
Yes.
The material asks the reader to honestly examine the small scraps of fear. We continue to hoard our old resentments, our private judgments, the people we refuse to forgive. And it delivers one of the most striking visuals in the entire text. It says, we sometimes polish our grievances more carefully than the family silver.
It's a haunting image.
But I need to challenge this, though. A grievance is a memory of being wronged. And sometimes we are actually wronged. People do terrible things. If someone betrays me or harms me, isn't releasing that grievance just letting them off the hook? Doesn't the ego's wall serve a valid protective purpose?
It's a vital distinction to make. Forgiving a grievance in this framework does not mean accepting abuse, lacking boundaries, or saying that a harmful action was acceptable.
Okay, good.
It is about what you are carrying internally. When you curate a museum of your resentments, taking them out to shine them up and display them, you're poisoning your own present moment. The ego tells you that holding on to the anger ensures justice and keeps you safe.
But in reality,
it just keeps you tethered to the person who hurt you. You are allowing them to live rent-free in your mind.
so polishing the grievance is literally drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Exactly. Dropping the grievance isn't a favor to them. It's the ultimate act of liberation for yourself.
Okay, so we understand the diagnosis. We're hoarding these polished grievances, walking around as simulated avatars, fighting other avatars, trapped in an economy of scarcity, listening to a 24-hour news channel of panic. The million-dollar question for the learner listening right now is, how do we stop?
The practical application.
Right. In the heat of the moment, when the adrenaline is pumping and the ego is fully in the driver's seat, what is the practical tool to snap out of it?
The framework provides a cognitive interrupt that is profoundly simple, yet requires immense discipline to apply. It posits that whenever we are not joyful, whenever we are experiencing inner conflict, we have simply chosen a mistaken way of seeing.
Okay.
And the essential correction, the circuit breaker to deploy in that exact moment, consists of 4 words. This need not be.
This need not be. It almost sounds too simple.
It does.
But let's pressure test it. Let's apply this tool to 3 of the heaviest emotional states the text specifically outlines, starting with sadness. Let's say I'm going through a bad breakup, or I didn't get the promotion I wanted. I am deeply sad. How does this need not be help me? Am I just supposed to pretend I'm not sad?
No, it's not about suppression or toxic positivity. It's an invitation to investigate the architecture of your sadness. In this framework, sadness often stems from a deeply held belief that you have been deprived of something absolutely necessary for your peace.
So I believe I needed that job to be okay, or I needed that relationship to be whole.
Correct. The ego attaches your worth to an external variable. Saying this need not be asks you to challenge that underlying assumption. Is it objectively true that your internal peace is permanently destroyed because an external circumstance changed?
Usually no.
Right. The tool suggests that if your peace is entirely dependent on the external, it was never true peace to begin with. It was just a temporary hostage situation. You have the power to choose to reconnect with your inherent wholeness, regardless of the external loss.
Okay, what about anxiety? When I am spiraling about the future, the text says to remember, this need not be. And this is where the material delivers what I think is our 5th lens, and honestly the most perceptive, hilariously accurate metaphor of the entire deep dive.
The unpaid intern.
Yes. Lens 5, the unpaid intern. It describes anxiety as the ego attempting to manage a future it has no actual power to control. The text essentially compares the ego to an unpaid intern attempting to run the universe.
It perfectly captures the absurdity of anxiety.
Think about an unpaid intern. They have no real authority, they lack the necessary experience, they are completely out of their depth, yet they're frantically running around the office trying to organize the cosmic timeline.
With zero actual power.
Right. The text practically implies it means well occasionally, but it absolutely should not have the admin passwords. Yet every time we spiral into a panic about what might happen 6 months from now, we are handing the master passwords of our consciousness to this unpaid intern.
And the results are predictably disastrous. The intern cannot actually control the external variables of the future, so attempting to do so only generates friction and panic.
So what does this need not be do here?
Saying this need not be is the deliberate act of revoking the passwords. It's acknowledging, I am expending massive amounts of energy trying to manipulate a timeline that is fundamentally not mine to control. I can relieve the intern of their duties and step back into the present moment.
That is incredibly freeing. And finally, the 3rd emotion, guilt. When you feel guilty, remember, this need not be. Now, I want to push back here again because societally we view guilt as the glue of morality. If people don't feel guilty, won't they just behave terribly?
This is where we have to separate functional responsibility from egoic self-punishment. The material explicitly states that guilt belongs exclusively to the ego's narrative, not your true identity. But it's not advocating for sociopathy.
Right. It doesn't mean do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is very clear. If you make a mistake, accept responsibility. Make amends where possible. Learn the lesson required. And then completely release the self-punishment.
Because the self-punishment is basically a selfish act. If I make a mistake at work that inconveniences my team, and I spend the next 3 days walking around acting miserable and apologizing constantly, I'm not actually helping them fix the problem.
You're just making them manage your emotions.
Yes. The guilt is an ego trip. It's making the situation about my suffering.
Exactly. Punishing yourself heals no one. It just adds more density to the ego. If we synthesize all 3 of these, sadness, anxiety, and guilt, the framework is proposing a radically different relationship with negative emotions.
Inner conflict isn't a sin.
No, it suggests that inner conflict is not a sign that you are fundamentally broken or deserving of punishment. Inner conflict is simply a dashboard indicator light.
Like the check engine light on my car.
Exactly. When the check engine light comes on, you don't pull over and scream at the dashboard. You don't feel profound moral shame because the light illuminated. You recognize it for what it is. a purely objective signal that something under the hood has fallen out of alignment and requires attention.
So negative emotion is just the indicator light telling you that the ego has grabbed the steering wheel.
It is simply a prompt to pause, say, "This need not be," and consciously choose to hand the microphone back to the spirit.
That reframing changes everything. But we have to be realistic here. The ego is a survival mechanism. It doesn't just hand over the keys and walk away quietly. When you start catching on to its tricks, when you start using "this need not be" to revoke the passwords, the ego brings out its final, most dense lines of defense to keep you trapped in the illusion.
The physical body.
Yes. According to the text, the ego's ultimate weapon is the physical body itself, along with the corruption of communication.
This is a critical transition in the material. The ego deliberately chooses the physical body as its home base in order to prove its central, terrifying claim that we are separate, fragile, vulnerable entities whose existence is finite.
It uses the body as proof.
Right. The ego points to the undeniable reality of the body, to physical pain, to sickness, to aging, and ultimately to death. And it says, look at this empirical evidence. You cannot possibly be an eternal, untouchable spirit. You are just this fragile biological shell, and you are in constant danger.
It leverages our very real physical vulnerability into existential despair. But the text points out this incredibly bizarre circular logic the ego uses, and I love how it exposes the con. It describes this internal dialogue we all have without realizing it.
It's quite funny when you break it down.
It really is. The ego comes to the mind and says, you are the body, this flesh is all you are, and the mind, feeling vulnerable, asks, okay, can the body protect me? And the ego has to admit, well, no, the body gets sick, it breaks down, it's easily injured.
So the mind asks for a solution.
Right. The mind logically asks, then where should I turn for real protection? And the ego proudly puffs out its chest and says, turn to me, I will protect you. And the mind replies, but wait, you just said you are the body, and you just admitted the body can't protect me.
It's a completely closed loop of faulty logic. And what does the ego do when the mind catches it in this contradiction?
The text literally says, at this point, the ego changes the subject, usually to something urgent but unimportant. It throws a psychological smoke bomb.
It distracts you.
Yes. Suddenly, you remember an email you forgot to send, or you feel a random pain in your knee, or you get an overwhelming urge to check social media.
It is a profound observation about how distraction functions as the ego's primary defense mechanism against awakening. The ego keeps us endlessly, frantically busy with side issues.
Unsolvable interpersonal drama.
Endless political debates, tasks that consume immense amounts of time but offer no real structural change to our happiness. It does all of this precisely because it does not want us to stay focused on the central question. Where can true protection actually be found?
Which brings us to the ultimate antidote to these smoke bombs. When the ego tries to change the subject, the framework offers a single clarifying question to cut through the noise and evaluate our actions. It tells us to stop and ask, what is this for?
What is this for is the ultimate question of purpose. Meaningful action cannot be blind. If you do not consciously assign a purpose to your action, the ego will automatically co-opt it for its own purposes.
So you have to be intentional.
The text asserts that if your genuine goal is peace, you must consciously choose thoughts and engage in actions that actively structurally serve peace.
Let's apply what is this for to modern life. Imagine it's 2 a.m., you are lying in bed, bathed in the blue light of your phone, locked in a ferocious multi-paragraph debate in the comments section of a YouTube video with a stranger named User479.
We've all been there.
Your heart rate is elevated, your thumbs are flying. If you stop and ask, what is this for? Is the purpose of this argument to bring you inner peace?
Obviously not. The text dryly notes, if the purpose is to prove someone wrong at 2 in the morning on the internet, at least be honest about it.
Don't lie to yourself.
Right. Do not pretend you are engaged in a noble, righteous crusade for truth when you are actually just feeding the ego's desperate need to be right, to establish superiority, and to reinforce separation. Asking, what is this for, instantly pierces the self-deception.
It really all comes down to communication, doesn't it? The ego uses communication as a weapon of separation. We use language to defend ourselves, to extract value from others, to prove that we are different and superior.
And look at how the ego behaves when it feels threatened in a communication exchange. It does not seek greater understanding. It seeks to interrupt communication.
It shuts down.
It deploys blame. It withdraws into silence to punish the other person. It attacks, or it utilizes what the text humorously refers to as selective hearing, The ancient art of hearing every word except the one that matters.
Oh, the ancient art of selective hearing. I heard you complain that I forgot to buy milk, but I conveniently missed the entire preceding sentence where you vulnerably admitted you've been feeling overwhelmed and unsupported lately.
Exactly.
We selectively curate what we hear to maintain our victimhood. But spirit, the alternative operating system, communicates entirely differently.
Spirit does not argue with illusions. The framework states that communication isn't just a tool that spirit uses, it is what true existence is. The premise is that the divine, or God, or source, creates by extending love, and that every mind was created to receive that love and extend it outward.
Which means our reality becomes distorted and limited the moment we restrict our communication. Whenever we shut down, whenever we attack, whenever we build a wall. True existence requires open, unimpeded communication.
Yes.
So how does this redefine the concept of praising God? Because traditionally, praising God means singing specific songs in a specific building, reciting specific words, essentially telling a deity how great they are.
The framework completely upends this traditional view. It states explicitly, to praise God does not mean flattering him. It points out that God does not have a fragile ego that requires constant compliments.
There is no heavenly suggestion box tallying up positive reviews from humanity.
God is not checking his Yelp rating to make sure he's still relevant. The divine does not need your verbal adulation. So how do we actually praise this source? The text provides a remarkably grounded, practical answer. We praise God by becoming wholly helpful and harmless.
Wholly helpful and harmless. It's not about what you say on Sunday. It's about the energetic posture you bring to the grocery store on Tuesday. It's about demonstrating greater patience, offering genuine forgiveness, dropping the need to be right.
It is about allowing love to move through you without an agenda. And there is a fascinating paradox here. The text notes that those who are truly helpful have no need to protect their egos. They have dropped the cardboard cutout.
They don't have walls to defend.
And because they have nothing to defend, no image, no callish grievances, no need to be perceived as superior, they become, ironically, far less vulnerable to attack. When you are truly harmless, you are practically untouchable.
But the crucial reminder here is how we transition to that state. We don't get there by declaring war on the ego. The material is very clear. You cannot escape the ego by humiliating it, controlling it, or punishing it.
Because fighting the ego is still just the ego fighting itself. It's engaging on the ego's terms.
Which brings us to our sixth and final lens today. The metaphor it uses is brilliant. It says, trying to use the ego to fix the ego is like appointing the fox to chair the henhouse safety committee.
You are using the source of the problem to investigate the problem.
It's ridiculous.
You don't fight the darkness in a room. If a room is dark, you don't organize a committee to study the darkness. You don't stand in the corner and scream at the darkness or try to beat it into submission. You simply turn on the light.
The light just replaces it.
So the text says, light does not wrestle with darkness. It simply disappears.
Yeah.
You don't battle the ego. You simply replace its thought system with the spirit's thought system. You actively replace judgment with forgiveness. You replace the frantic need to be right with the quiet desire to be helpful. And in that shift of focus, the ego starves.
We have covered an immense psychological landscape today. We started by identifying the invisible battery train, the two competing voices constantly whispering in our ears, the grounded, quiet voice of spirit, and the relentless, exhausting, 24-hour emergency news channel of the ego.
We examined how true teaching operates, looking at the premise that a guide like Jesus doesn't aim to create dependent followers, but guides students to learn, understand, and practice until they realize their own inherent worth and become free, capable teachers themselves.
We looked at this through our 6 lenses: the background app, the screaming toddler with their favorite dangerous objects, the ego-centered teacher's large photograph, the emotional ledger keeping our receipts, the unpaid intern trying to run the universe, and the fox chairing the henhouse safety committee.
All these lenses point to the same core truth.
Right. We learned that crucial pattern interrupt. This need not be. We realized we need to permanently revoke the admin passwords from that unpaid intern, and we learned to deploy the ultimate filter, what is this for? To cut through the ego's smoke bombs.
Ultimately, the paradigm shift here is that the ego is not a demonic enemy to be slain in some grand spiritual battle. It is simply a mistaken identity to be understood, seen through, and gently released. The journey back to peace begins the moment we simply decide to tune out the static and listen to the other voice.
Which brings us to the end of our exploration today. But before you transition back into the hustle of your daily routine, before you face the next email or the next conversation, we want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought to mull over.
The framework states that every single mind that changes from fear to love adds to the joy of all. This isn't just a private, isolated victory. Shifting your internal state literally shifts the network.
So as you walk into your next interaction today, whether it's a high-stakes meeting with your boss, a quick text to your partner, or just a passing exchange with a barista, consider this experiment. What if you completely dropped your end of the ego's script?
If you flat out refuse to play your defensive, ledger-keeping avatar, how would the other person's imagined avatar be forced to recalibrate and change in response?
Who are you, really, when you finally take the scissors away from the toddler and step into the present moment? It's a question that can change the entire trajectory of your day. Thank you for taking this time for yourself, for doing the hard work of examining the background drain, and for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, no matter how loud, dramatic, and confident that panic channel gets beneath all the noise, the quiet voice of love remains unchanged.
Thank you for listening. If today's conversation resonated with you, please take a moment to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may benefit from these reflections on A Course in Miracles and the deeper questions of life. Your support allows us to continue creating conversations that explore consciousness, reality, love, forgiveness, and what it truly means to awaken. I'm Kim Kaur, and it is my privilege to introduce Joe Bandra. Joe is an author, philosopher, speaker, healthcare technology pioneer, and a lifelong explorer of humanity's greatest questions. For more than 3 decades, he has worked at the intersection of science and medicine while pursuing an equally passionate exploration of A Course in Miracles. His first book, Finding Neve, is a transformative journey into self-discovery and the search for lasting happiness. His second book, Body, Mind, and Machine, shares his remarkable career in healthcare technology and the evolution of a profession dedicated to improving human lives. His upcoming work, The Nature of Reality, brings together science, philosophy, psychology, mysticism, and direct experience to explore one of humanity's oldest questions. What is reality really? Through every conversation, Joe invites us to question our assumptions, look beyond appearances, and discover a deeper understanding of ourselves, each other, and the extraordinary universe we share. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and above all, keep awakening.
Life often feels like an endless list of tasks, constant noise and distractions, pulling us in every direction. We're all searching for happiness, but what if we've been looking in the wrong places all along?
This was Nevaeh's journey. Lost in the noise, she felt cut off from the peace and happiness she longed for. Until she met Joe Bandra, an unconventional, insightful philosopher with a different perspective. Jay, as he is simply known, didn't hand her a map. He gave her something far more valuable, a compass, a way to turn inward, navigate her own thoughts, and uncover the clarity hidden beneath the chaos.
Readers around the world have been touched and inspired by Finding Nevaeh.
Your journey to inner peace begins now. Get your copy of Finding Nevaeh, available on Amazon and at findingnevaeh.org, or listen to the audiobook on Audible, Spotify, Apple, and other platforms.